That situation happened. I'm like, all right, cool, we move on. And then when we couldn't, I was like, huh?
We believed that he and Jordan Poole had moved past their argument, much like Draymond. However, everything has changed since fresh fight footage of Jordan and Draymond has emerged. You'll be astounded by what it discloses about Steve Kerr's involvement. Let me explain. The startling disclosure. We believed we were familiar with the narrative of Draymond Green punching Jordan Poole at that practice on October 5, 2022, for more than 2 years. We watched the repercussions in real time, heard the apologies, and saw the TMZ film. However, the shocking disclosures that have surfaced present an entirely different picture. One in which Steve Kerr, the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, masterminded one of the most heinous betrayals in NBA history. The smoking gun comes from insider accounts and freshly unearthed footage that expose a nefarious pattern of manipulation that predates the punch that went viral by more than a year. This is what actually occurred. Michael Jordan had punched Steve Kerr while he was a player, and Kerr purposefully set up his own player to receive a punch to the face. The recently made public information demonstrates that Kerr knew exactly how the erratic veteran would react. So he urged Jordan Poole to approach Draymond Green. This was not coaching. It was deliberate manipulation that put his teammates' welfare last and gave priority to an unidentified agenda.
Age 33, 34, 35, I still learn those lessons. That situation happened. I'm like, all right, cool, we move on. And then when we couldn't, I was like, huh? And for a while, it made me think like, man, this dude nothing like me.
The recently disclosed timeline depicts a pattern of systematic deception and intimidation that reduces Game of Thrones to a bedtime tale for kids. The verbal threats and altercations began much earlier than anybody thought, with Green allegedly telling Poole, "I'm going to beat the hell out of you," during a timeout against the Minnesota Timberwolves in November 2021. "I'll get you, __." This is when things become really evil, though. The shocking new information claims that Steve Kerr, the coach who had been struck by Michael Jordan while he was a player, knew just what buttons to press and when. In 2022, following the Warriors' preseason trip to Japan, Green publicly chastised Poole for not Kerr made his move by outperforming the first unit in scrimmages. Instead of trying to defuse the situation, the coach pulled Poole away and gave what can only be called a well-planned provocation. Take a stand for yourself. Act like a man. Consider the intentional brutality of those remarks. Having personally witnessed the humiliation of being physically subdued by a teammate, Kerr basically set up Poole to elicit the precise reaction that would put an end to his Warriors' career. This is the case of Draymond. He apologized, and I'm a professional. We intend to treat ourselves that way, Everyone on our squad and in the locker room is aware of what it takes to win a title. And we are here to play basketball. What came next? Seems to be a Shakespearean tragedy that Machiavelli wrote himself. Poole chose to put his newly acquired confidence to the test after being encouraged by his coach and having just outperformed the veterans in a spectacular scrimmage performance. The final line was said by P during the following practice session when Green persisted in his verbal abuse scheme. "You are aware of it, Draymond. For 30, you're a pricey backpack." It is impossible to exaggerate this insult's mathematical accuracy. Green wasn't merely referred to as a role player by Poole. He made reference to Stephen Curry's jersey number in particular, suggesting that Green was merely an accessory worn by the real star of the team. This wasn't just trash talk to someone with Green's pride and defensive attitude. His innermost fears over his position within the Warriors' hierarchy became the focus of psychological warfare. Green's reaction was brutal and quick. The climax of months of planned tension is depicted in the TMZ tape that was revealed a few days later. After calling Poole a Poole pushback, Green delivered the right hook that would shake the NBA as a whole. Here's what, though, makes this news so shocking. Draymond Green has responded to these recent claims by calling Cap out and indicating the untruth of the pricey backpack tale on social media with 6 cap emojis. Nevertheless, a number of sources in the comprehensive timeline imply that these narratives have more reality than Green want to admit it.
When I watched the video, I'm looking at the video, and I'm like, yo, this looks awful. Like, this looks even worse than I thought it was. It's pathetic. And then I had to take a step back too and realize.
Beyond a single practice incident, Kerr's deception has far-reaching consequences. This coach had the best understanding of his team's psychological dynamics, but he decided to use that understanding as a weapon, ultimately destroying the very synergy he was meant to preserve. By motivating P to confront Green. Given Green's history of instability and physical intimidation, Kerr effectively loaded the pistol that would end his own team's hopes of winning a championship. The timing of this treachery adds to its evil nature. The future of a franchise's two-timeline approach was represented by P, who was about to sign his deal. Green, on the other hand, was unsure about his own contract status. Kerr must have been aware of that. Playing with dynamite close to an open flame encouraged this confrontation at such a vulnerable time. Well, I believe in the first few minutes.
I think in the very first few minutes, or first few or 10 or whatever, I think you're initially upset, pissed off, which is why you have the reaction you have.
I believe that for the first minute, I was just upset and didn't really think about anything but what had just happened. According to the psychological profile that results from this new information, Kerr was a skilled manipulator who knew just how to steer both players in the direction of a collision. He was aware of Green's trigger, challenges to his authority, inquiries about his contribution to the team, and most importantly, any implication that he was following Curry's lead. He was also aware of Poole's fears, his need to establish himself with the veterans, his demand for respect, and his developing self-assurance as a vital member of the winning squad. Kerr fueled a vicious cycle of toxic masculinity and rivalry by posing as the voice urging Poole to be a man at arrogance that could only lead to catastrophe. Green's reflections on learning these lessons at the ages of 33 and 35 imply that even he is aware of how he was duped into acting against his better judgment. It's not one of those arguments where you both end up being good friends. There's more to this story than anyone cares to acknowledge. I would say, you know what, if I were him and I did that, I'm not even worthy of attending ring night. This revelation's most terrifying feature is how readily people in positions of power can use team dynamics as a weapon. Kerr didn't make the choice to support P's disobedience in a vacuum. It was a deliberate action that put an unknown agenda ahead of his teammates' welfare and the team's morale. Whether it was due to power struggles, contract disputes, or just bad planning, the end consequence was the deliberate ruin of what may have been another season that defined the dynasty. As we delve more into this tale, we'll examine how this one act of deceit led to a total collapse of trust, costing the Warriors their chance to win a title and permanently changing the course of two bright lives. The punch was only the start. Everything that came after was where the true destruction was. Draymond's regret and the consequences. The instant following that unfortunate blow demonstrated precisely how Kerr's influence had disastrously backfired, turning what ought to have been a dynasty that won championships into a shattered group of bitter individuals that were barely able to keep together. The October 7, 2022, TMZ video dump revealed more than just a violent incident. It lifted the veil on a poisonous atmosphere that has been brewing behind Golden State's ostensibly flawless culture. There was more than just a punch in the video that stunned the sports community. It demonstrated the total disintegration of the mutual respect and professional boundaries that formerly characterized the Warriors' championship culture. Draymond Green, the leader of emotion and four championship teams' defensive anchor, had been reduced to hurling haymakers at a teammate who was too young to be abused but could be mentored. On the floor of the practice facility, Jordan Poole, the rising star who stood for the team's future, was crumpled. Any possibility of preserving their working relationship was dashed, along with his confidence and trust.